Hey there, good morning. Welcome to Hope for Today. My name's Tim, and I'm thrilled to be with you this morning. One of the stories that is troubling to a lot of people is the story of Abraham being called by God to sacrifice his own son, Isaac. It's one of those stories that if you really lean into it, it gets uncomfortable real fast. And so you either keep a big distance from it and you think, well, of course, God gave him a promise and then was fulfilling the promise and then wanted to make sure that Abraham understood the promise and asked for it back, and then we're out. But can you imagine what it would have been like for God to have spoken that to you, to say, hey, I want that back. And then you've got to sit there and wrestle with the very thing that God has given you that he's asked for it back. Well, let's take a step out of the Bible story for just a minute and consider what it means to sacrifice anyway. I mean, as people, we've struggled with the concept of sacrifice, even outside of a religious context. If you think way back when we were like hunter-gatherers, it probably made most sense for me to hunt for myself and my family, or to gather for myself and my family, and to share that experience with anyone else probably felt a little bit intimidating. It probably felt like the potential for loss. Until somewhere along the lines, people decided that they could actually hunt bigger and better together. And so even though there was a trade-off that we were going to hunt together and then we were going to take home the spoils together, what we would accomplish in doing it together was actually better for both of us in the long run. And so there began to develop in us an ethic that some sacrifices are worth it if I gain on the back end. Well, you start to fast forward to the time when God speaks to Abraham and he says, hey, I'm going to give to you and now I want you to sacrifice back to me. And the sacrifice is that you'll lose what you've gained. Not that hey, maybe if I roll the dice and I'll bring God into my equation, maybe I'll get more out of it. Hey, if I roll the dice and start to hunt with other people and get more out of it. Hey, if I roll the dice and open up a business with my friend, maybe I'll get more out of it. Hey, if I roll the dice and go into marriage with my spouse, I'll get more out of it. No, the call to sacrifice from God was really clear. Abram, if you answer yes on this, you're not going to get more out of it. You're going to lose. That's really the heaviness that sat on Abram as he was quiet the whole hike up the mountain, and why his son had to ask into the process they were in. Dad, what are we doing? We're going to sacrifice. But what sacrifice? God's going to provide. Oh, wait, there it is. There's still that concept that Abraham was holding on to, just like we do in any other situation. When we think that we're going to be exposed, when we think there's potential for loss, we replace the potential for loss with the potential for gain. And they get up to the top of the mountain and there's nothing left. And Abraham at that moment really is going to lose his son. And he decides in his heart that it's still worth sacrificing, even if there's not the potential for gain. And in that moment is when God stills his hand and says, stop, let me provide you with something. Now, I don't know when on the path up the mountain Abraham had stopped bargaining with God or bartering with God that maybe if I sacrifice, maybe if I share control in the situation with you, I'll get more out of it. But I just know that our culture struggles with the concept of sacrifice, and really what we usually mean is I'll let go of a little bit of control if I think I can gain in the end. And that's not the call to sacrifice. The call to sacrifice is to trust the person so much that you're actually willing to lose what you're going to let go of. And today, my calling is this. If God is asking you to sacrifice and you've been struggling because maybe the pandemic and the economic downturn, your hands are wrapped so tight around your finances right now, giving to God is a bygone dream. Would you be willing to sacrifice? Maybe in your relationship with someone, a spouse, a business partner, you feel really protective and guarded, and you've got to control them because you're not getting as much in that relationship as you thought you would. Would you be willing to sacrifice? Maybe even in your own spirit, your soul, your values, your ethics, your behavior, those things that God wants to speak into and say, hey, could you let that down? No, God, only if I gain back. No, that's not sacrifice. Sacrifice is willing to let go of something for the sake of the other. Abraham got there somewhere on his walk up to the top of that mountain. And maybe today you're wrestling with something that God has asked you to let go for a long time now, and you keep telling him, only if I get something better back. Maybe today, this random Devo is an encouragement to you to tell God, Never mind. God, you've got it. Because sacrifice is me trusting you more than it. And I'm willing to bet that in the moment you're willing to tell him that, God actually does have something for you. But what I can promise you is that if you're willing to give him a piece of your life, you get all of him. And that is hope for today.